Hi, my name is Ken Schwartz of Precise Sharpening, and today I'm going to continue exploring some of the Nubatama stones. This stone is a potential candidate for either the ume or bamboo series of stones, but is not yet available. As you can see, this stone is a 205 by 50 by 25 millimeter stone. It certainly will be suitable for use for the EdgePro, so it does deserve some additional consideration in that regard. So do let me know if you like this stone, and I'll consider bringing it in. Thank you for your attention. Let's first start out with a bit of a porosity test and just give it their little squirt. Okay, so it's going to need a little bit of brief soaking. Again, this is a 1000 grit stone. Okay. Alright, so it's starting to slow down already a little. Okay, so let's let it run for a minute or so. And I'm going to, just for the fun of it, do a somewhat unusual knife. This is a jackfruit cleaver I picked up near the CCK shop in Hong Kong. You can see it's a very unusually shaped knife. What's particularly unusual is the spine, in that if, let me put it in the light over here, it widens as it goes out. And the purpose of this is that all of the force gets exerted on this point to go through the tough jackfruit skin. Works also on durian as well. And then once it's in there, you can hit this and keep pushing it through. So that's the purpose of this. I use it a lot for opening coconuts. This works very well on the eyes of the coconut. Goes right in there. You can push it open, empty the coconut, and then just crack it right on open because you've got all that force on that one little point. So I'm going to use it on this stone. It does seem to be holding its water pretty well right now. So I think we can pretty well go with a spray bottle at this point. So it's an unusual curve. There's still some burr on here. It's not particularly sharp, but we just, I just want to see how this works out on a knife, on a stone that's narrower, because this will help me follow the curvature of this knife. So let's start in on it, and it's a pretty steep angle. So let's go over here and see how this begins to work. Okay. Okay, and let's follow the curve around like that and around. So that's the stroke for this knife. A little more complex than usual, but the narrowness of the stone lets me get into this tighter radius of curvature over here. I think this stone would also work very well in a knife kit and take up less space than the wider, more traditional stone sizes. So let's get going a little on it, see how this works out. And we'll test another knife after this, because this is such an unusual shape that I don't want to base my opinion entirely on this one blade. You can also, on a very tight radius curve, follow the very edge of a stone, which is much like what you do with a serrated knife. Okay, where you're maintaining this angle relative to the edge rather than relative to the surface. And for this, I think that a edge trailing stroke will be a little easier to work with. Okay, it's pretty much taken the burr off of it. It's not a really good test, one way or the other, so I don't really have a definitive view from what I've done so far with this particular knife, but it was more of a curiosity and an interesting knife. Let's see how well it cuts. Probably a more useful test on this is how well the tip cuts than the edge. So let's give it a swipe. Okay, very nice. Okay, so it does what it needs to do. We can see how well some of the curve works. Okay, it's adequate. It's adequate to do its job, but let's use a knife that would be a little bit more representative. So what we'll do now is let's try this Tojiro or Tojiro. It's a Honosuke. It's a knife similar to the Garasuke that I used earlier, but as you can see, the Garasuke is basically a bigger and thicker version with a thicker spine. So this is also a flat back, so not quite like a traditional single bevel because it's just flat rather than concave, and it has a somewhat steep angle over here. So most of the sharpening is done on this side. You don't tend to use a very acute edge on this because you are going to be cutting through cartilage and some of the smaller chicken bones. I prefer using this for something like something like a deba for chicken. The tip you tend to use for doing dissection to take the breast off of the chest wall. So let's see how this works for a minute, and what we can do is let's listen to the stone as well. So it does generate a little bit of mud. It's a pretty fine mud. Good feedback. Nice texture. We have generated a pretty good sized burr actually. So I'm going to remove the burr off the back. Now the way you do that is instead of just laying it completely flat, bring it up just a hair so that you're not scratching the back surface, unlike a traditional single bevel knife. And what we'll do is just go laterally again, so flat and just a pinch up and go across, very light pressure. Okay, we'll do a few strokes on the back. Okay, so overall impression, good rate of abrasion, It does generate a slight amount of mud, not a heavy amount. It produces what appears to be a pretty good edge. Its benefits are that it's going to be a very portable stone, somewhat lower price because of its size. And let's take a look at this edge just a little bit, see how it goes. Okay, cutting is okay. Paper slice is all right. It does push cut fairly well. All right, so that's an overview of it. I'd very much appreciate some feedback as to whether you'd like me to consider this within the line of Nubatama stones. Thank you for your time.